Welcome to another special edition of Talk Fulton. My name is Kathleen Brown, Public Arts Education Coordinator at the Public Art Futures Lab. Today we're spotlighting artist in residence Jordan Young. He was the 2024 Atlanta Downtown Artist for the Public Art Futures Lab. Thank you so much for being here, Jordan.
Thanks, Kathleen. Glad to be here.
Thanks. So in this conversation, we're going to go way back to when you first were introduced to the Futures Lab, which I know for you started as one of our artist facilitators. Could you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, so I remember when the Futures Lab opened, and I was really excited about it just because in my career and my practice, I've always been really enthusiastic around connecting art with technology. And so to see Fulton County Public Art, really put forward this effort to create a space supporting that sort of growing infrastructure was really exciting. So I was there, for the opening, and was immediately looking for ways to plug in. And the Futures Lab has always been really supportive of me and any sort of initiatives or programming that I wanted to help get off the ground. And one of those first opportunities was through offering educational workshops. And my artistic practice spreads many disciplines. So being able to sort of share unique buckets of skill sets with other artists has been really fulfilling. And I'm thankful for a place like the Futures Lab to help make that happen.
Could you kind of talk about some of the other areas of your practice?
Sure. Yeah. So music was definitely the first sort of discipline that hooked me from an early age. And through that, I sort of discovered fascinations with a lot of different other disciplines. So through music performance, I got into audio and then stage design and lighting and projection mapping, interactive design, doing a lot of electronic live music with vocal manipulation and effects. All of these things sort of bleeding together in several different capacities. It's funny because most Atlanta people probably know me as a photographer, and that's one of sort of the offshoots of that creative exploration. But I'm a firm believer that a lot of those creative skill sets are transmutable across disciplines, and that artists, when they develop their intuition and they develop a sense of composition and these things, they can carry them across disciplines. So, I'm always, continuing to spread out in terms of, my practice. And, I think in terms of an arc, I think over the last few years, my work has moved more into community-based experiences and just experiences that are more about collaborative discovery and less about, things that I might have to say. And the Futures Lab and my residency with the Atlanta Downtown was a huge part of that sort of change for me.
Definitely. You're always avoiding the boxes.
Yeah.
And as a part of the residency partnership, Atlanta Downtown does ask artists to complete certain objectives. So when you came into this residency, what drew you to their brief specifically, and how do you feel like you accomplished that?
Yeah, so I think there were sort of two aspects that I felt were important to engaging with this program. One was sort of just a celebration of downtown and the spaces and the people that make it such a vibrant hub. And the second is that lens shift towards community. And I think the Futures Lab is just really uniquely positioned to support that sort of thinking and that sort of programming. And so that public engagement was a part of that, prompt and a part of the conceit of it. And it was also a direction I was very much feeling in my personal practice. So that was a very synergetic sort of movement I felt. And I do think when we talk about technology and art, I think that community focus is really essential. I think why we use technology, one, I think technology makes a lot of messages and expression possible for people. It makes it more accessible. And then I also think it's important that the public engages with technology through art as a means of becoming better aware and better equipped in the society we live in. I think there's some subject matter that we really can only engage through the use of technology. So it's just really important, beyond the normal sort of virtues of art making in general, building empathy, having a better relative understanding of your subjective reality, which are inherently valuable things. I think those are all sort of the things swirling at that connection between art and technology that drew me to this Artist in Residence program.
And that amplification power of technology that you're talking about, you also kind of reiterated that within your own residency by using your residency to amplify the voices of other artists. And we joked around that you kind of incepted your residency to create another multiple residencies within it. So could you talk about first the photography show that was focused around downtown kind of dance scene, and then also the Artist Collider residency that you created?
Sure. So yeah, these are both programs I launched through the Futures Lab. The first was called Eyes on the Floor and featured a group of Atlanta queer nightlife scene photographers. And that show was important to me. I feel, I am an individual. I'm also an expression of my community. And I think both of these projects were ways that felt like a way for me to share this opportunity and sort of create this recursive loop with my community in a way that was way more fulfilling than if I were to try to, set out to accomplish something artistically by myself. I think that all the lessons I've learned on dance floors and through photography on dance floors, I wanted to provide a doorway for the public to also learn those lessons through the eyes of these other photographers. And I think their work is so lucid and really depicts people in a state of freedom that is really, I think, truly an expression of what Atlanta can be and has been for a lot of people. And so giving the public gateways into a world that they may never actually step foot in, that they may not know anybody who is active in, but just sharing the miraculous potential in those spaces and sort of what it means to so many people, I think can be a way, as one of the featured photographers put it, sort of a way of breaking down their barriers and their, the trappings that they set themselves in. So that's a really great show with 5 amazing photographers. We did full video interviews with them alongside their photo selections, and those are all available on my website, jordanyoungcreative.com. Really great interviews. They talk about their photography, what the scene means for them, and just their journey as a photographer. So that's really how the technology connects with community in that interesting way. The other program you mentioned, Artist Collider, was another way. I've had all these. I've always kept an educational flame alive, and I've always wanted to provide more spaces for artists to feel like they can experiment and not be tied down to deliverables or a timeline or the source of funding or any of these things that artists are usually, limited by when they're creating work. And also an opportunity to explore and experiment with technology that they might not otherwise get to engage with, which is where the Futures Lab is uniquely positioned to help these artists, having this library of resources and tools for them to use. And that was very much an experiment and really relied on the good faith of inviting artists to have more of a free-form sort of approach to experimentation. And it ended up being very intentional. And we had some really great conversations, not just about art making, but just about the state of the world and our responsibility as artists. And I think it ended up being just a much more fulfilling space for not having those requirements and limitations on the format. So, that's something I would love to see more of, just space for artists to experiment. And yeah, very fulfilling to be able to share my residency that way with these other artists.
And that took the form of sometimes like an artist would come in who was primarily working with sound, but then they decided to explore 3D design, or an artist who has only worked in 2D video, then deciding to work in 3D video. Like, it was just all these crossovers and then collaborations that ensued from the group to resulting in an exhibition. And yeah, I loved the way that came together and like totally echoed your own creative responsibilities that you talk about within the community.
Yeah. And, I was really looking at some of those things that have held me back in my practice and thinking about ways to hack, our mindset out of those trappings and the perfectionism, the obsession with that final product, and just feeling like you can't step out of your given discipline. And so, yeah, I think it was just a very liberating experience for a lot of artists who were never really, it's nice to be given the challenge to dabble and just discover something else. And I think a lot of folks ended up walking away with a new, toolbox of stuff to play with, which is really great.
Yeah. And we've kept in contact with a lot of them. So they're now part of our community that you drew in. And then I think the project that most people who wouldn't even know they saw from yours is the eyes that were a part of your digital signage, which was like a specific deliverable for Atlanta downtown A&E. Could you talk about what those videos were?
Sure. Yeah. So Look at Your Eyes was definitely a surprise project from the residency, and it was the last project I did, and it really came to me very quickly, sort of in a vision, honestly. But several times, I've always been fascinated with like macro photography. Irises are gorgeous, of course. There's this innate beauty to macro photography of irises, and I had been thinking about just really simple ways of tricking your brain into, recognizing itself and just thinking about how we create reality and how we think about ourselves. And I think that actually looking at your own eyes is sort of a way of hacking that and expanding your understanding of yourself and how you create reality. And so for this show, I did macro photography of probably about 50 or 60 people before the show, and then several dozen actually at the show. And through that process was able to have this like aha moment with so many different people. And then the show actually involved some other optical illusions and some anaglyphic 3D prints and just some other ways of sort of thinking about how we look at things and reflecting on that sort of subjective reality creation.
And then the kinetic piece that you used some of those video files for, I thought that was really cool. Could you talk about that?
Sure. So one of the interactive pieces from the show, I basically created an instrument where people could play the library of iris photos as an instrument. So you could like zoom in or rotate through the different eye photos. And that was just a really easy way to sort of demonstrate the breadth of all the beautiful iris photos that I had been able to take, but also to sort of create this synesthetic experience of just like demonstrating the similarity between all of our eyes.
Awesome. So what is next for you? I know you are always in everything, and could you kind of talk about something you're excited about?
Yeah, great question. So I'm actually really trying to get back to music this year. So I've been producing. I have some, demos. I have some different interactive stuff I'm working on. But otherwise, I'm still sort of full throttle in every direction, doing a lot of photo video kind of stuff. I would really love to do more interactive and projection mapping work. So, you know, here and there, a different project every month. Yeah.
Do you have some piece of wisdom that you would share with someone who considers themselves an artist or who feels like they're going to call themselves an artist one day?
I think for artists and even beyond artists, I think following the fun is a really important idea. If you can find the thing that gets you in that flow state and makes the work play, then, you know, chase that. And I think, you know, that's where you can cheat time and get more out of yourself and find that stuff, discover yourself more, and, you know, not burn your life force out on stuff you don't care about.
Thank you so much, Jordan, for sharing these thoughts with us. And thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Love being here.
Thank you for being here for this special edition of Talk Fulton. We have a brand new cohort of artists and residents at the Futures Lab, and we're excited to share their work with you over the course of this year. Thank you so much.